with women, young girls, when you pull up data and you say, okay, I hear people will say, speaking to a doctor, we're at a soccer match, and he says, yeah, girls are having periods earlier than ever before. Why? Well, there's many different reasons. I said, tell me the history about it. And then we pull up the history, and it says, in the late 1800s was 16, 17 years old. And in early 1900s, yeah, right there. So from 15 to 17 years old. And it went to 12 and a half to 13 years old. And then went even lower and lower. And then today it's 11 point something years old. 11 years old. And some even, especially Black and Hispanic girls, beginning puberty signs at 8 or 9 years old, with some early as 6 or 7 years old. This is the earliest in recorded history. Why is that?
I think it's because of the number of exposures of substances and chemicals in the modern world that have estrogen-like binding properties. I mean, you can go to the river and test the water, and you'll find that there are things in there with estrogen-like binding properties in the modern world, things that have never been formally studied, but we know it binds to the estrogen receptor partially, not entirely, partially. And this is a huge issue. I mean, you talk about existential threats, right, to the human race. The age of puberty has been going down by a week and a half each year for roughly the last 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, in Europe, where they may not have some of these exposures, you still have girls going into puberty at age 14, sometimes 15. Something's going on, and we have not paid attention to this. It's in the MAHA report that this is a priority for us to look at, but something's going on. And I remember in med school, we'd learn this. They teach it in 2 seconds, just a flash line in the textbooks. And I remember that the instructor mentioned this. They were talking about puberty and the precocious puberty and other conditions. And they said the age of puberty is going down. It's now years earlier than it was a century ago. And then they moved on to the next topic in one breath. And I remember like, whoa. We're not going to pause and talk about this. And you have these issues in American medicine that live in these blind spots. And only intellectually curious people like yourself who ask about it prompts the medical establishment to look at these things. Because we have a medical system that's designed to play whack-a-mole with prescribing meds and operating on people. Prescribe, operate. And so you come in, and we've done this terrible thing to doctors in America, where you come in and you get on the hamster wheel, and you're told, here are your tools, prescribe and operate, and you can only work within the confines of your clinic, and we're going to measure you by your throughput. And so these doctors become these busy beavers, just billing, coding, writing notes, prescribing and operating, billing, coding, writing notes, prescribing and operating. And you wonder why the burnout rates are higher than any other profession, right? So we've got to stop and ask, what are we doing?
Yeah, and so let's just say if I'm the establishment doctor, representative, and I say, what's wrong with it starting earlier? Well, how is that even a bad thing? Maybe it's a good thing that it's starting earlier. Maybe it's they could make that argument to say, if they start earlier, they get acclimated to it before they start the adult life and all this other stuff. What arguments have they made? Have you heard any arguments for saying that it's good that they're starting it earlier?
I have not heard those arguments. I've not engaged in this debate. I mean, one thing that I've seen written about is girls becoming pregnant earlier than their body is prepared to be pregnant. I personally have my own personal views, and that is that we are messing with God's creation when you see women undergoing puberty earlier and earlier.
You think what do you think about birth control pills?
I mean, I don't have a view on it.
Yeah, because I'm trying to see what's happened during that time that would change things. The first smallpox vaccine, was given. Can you check to see, Rob, when was the first small? It was
1799. Yeah, okay, 1796 in Europe, and then it came to the United States. Dr. Benjamin Waterhouse was trying to recommend this to everybody, and President John Adams was not into it. But then Thomas Jefferson believed in these vaccines and started the National Vaccination Program.
So could that have anything to do with it? Because again, patterns. What did we introduce that we didn't have before that all of a sudden changed things? I don't know when the first birth control was. Rob, can you pull up because when you're a kid nowadays, they'll say my girl has acne. Yeah, let's give her some birth control pills. My kid's going through this. Yeah, let's give her some birth control pills. But she's not sexually active. Let's just give her birth control pills. And then later on, you're seeing all these side effects. And that was early 1900s, the idea began. Margaret Sanger opens the first birth control clinic in U.S., quickly shut down. 30s and 50s, researchers on hormones and ovulation make the idea of a birth control pill scientifically possible. 51, 57, the development of the pill. Scientist Carl Gerasi synthesizes a key hormone, enabling the creation of the pill. And then 50s, funding and activism, Margaret Sanger and McCormick pushed the research forward with Dr. Gregory Pincus and John Rock. The FDA approves the pill for menstrual disorders, not contraception. Women use it off-label, that's 57. And then the first official contraceptive approval was May 9th, 1960. The FDA officially approves Innovid as the first oral contraceptive pill. And then birth control is legalized for married couples, 65. Then legalized for unmarried women, 72. And then you have all these other things that comes up, the IUDs, which are horrible, the female condoms, implants, emergency contraception. Yeah, is there a study to look into? Is there somebody that's researching this even deeper that we can look into?
Yeah, there are teams looking at why puberty is going down in age. It's interesting in that chronology that you went through, which is fascinating. The early use was part of the eugenics movement, which people don't realize was alive and well and dominant and state-sanctioned in many states in the United States in the early 1900s. And it wasn't sort of judicious population control. It was poor people and people that were deemed, it used to be that if you were poor, it was assumed you were dumb. You were just not intelligent. And there was this sort of stereotyping. So there was an attempt to essentially reduce the population of minorities in the United States and people who were poor by giving them birth control, forced sterilization, surgically and in other ways. And that was a part of a massive campaign that even persisted in some states through, I think, the 50s. And it's a very dark chapter of the United States. But that was the initial part that you said when it was shut down after its initial.
You're talking about Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood and the history of her and, what things you read about her. You think, if you haven't read about her, you're like, oh, Planned Parenthood, what a sweetheart. She was probably a good. And then later on you realize this woman was like not today's word of racism. She's actually right there, the adherent of the eugenics movement. She argued that birth control would reduce the number of unfit people. Right. That's her words, and improve the overall health of the human race.
Right. This is the American eugenics movement. And this, we're like one living generation away. This is not like, the Battle of Babylon.
No, she died in 66 at 86. So it's not and today folks defend Planned Parenthood as if it's the greatest thing for women. And what they don't realize is, I don't know what percentage of the abortions are black women, but a big percentage of them. High percentage of them. And, one of our guys here, Tom, calls it the black genocide because imagine how many, future presidents, entrepreneurs in the African-American community are no longer here because of what she did with Planned Parenthood. But God forbid you try to do anything with them. And any plans with these guys? Is there anything we want to do, you guys want to do with Planned Parenthood?
They are giving out a lot of puberty blockers. So, that's not right. Some kid doesn't like going through puberty. I mean, puberty is stressful, right? I mean, let's be honest. Childhood is stressful. I mean, the dynamics of kids interacting. And so a kid comes in, didn't want to go through puberty, and we as a medical field say, oh, just take these pills and we'll just defer it, kick the can down the road, and you can decide later what your gender is. It's not right. It's not right. I mean, you look at some of the indicators of the morality of our society, and it's scary. Thank God for President Trump. I mean, can you imagine the alternative right now?
Oh my God. I mean, if Kamala was president today, do you know what that would like? I saw a video today. Man wins women's strongest, competition in Texas. I don't know if you saw this or not. And the second place, who's a woman, walks off, looks at the guy, shakes her head, and just, minds her own business, right? Is that it, Rob? Yeah, can you play that clip? Look at that. So, male adult film actor Jasmine Booker just won the title for World's Strongest Woman in Arlington, Texas, denying female opponent Andrea Thompson her rightful place on the top of women's podium. These are the types of things. And by the way, this is in Texas, out of all places. Now, of course, Texas is not approving this. It just so happens where the competition was held in Texas. When we set out to create a shoe that blends comfort, function, and luxury, we had the choice to make it fast. We had the choice to make it cheap. We chose neither. Instead, we chose Tuscany, Italy. We chose true Italian craftsmanship, each pair touched by 50 skilled hands. We chose patience, spending 2 years perfecting every detail, and we chose the finest quality at every step. Introducing the Future Looks Bright collection. Not rushed, not disposable, not ordinary. Rather, intentional, luxurious, timeless. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.